Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. In this video, we're going to talk about handgun grip. Now, I have done a video specifically on this topic in the past. However, it didn't address some things that I should have addressed specifically in the video, and that's the applied technique. The question came up repeatedly when I did my video on trigger control for the handgun. People asking exactly how I applied my grip. And instead of doing like a questions answered video for this, I figured I'd come out here in the range and really get into the topic. The grip on the handgun is superbly important for a number of reasons. The main reason being it gives you a stable shooting platform, which is kind of intuitive. You're like, yeah, of course that makes sense. But you want a consistent grip for a number of different reasons. If your grip is consistent and you've identified any issues with your grip technique, it allows you to get the same performance at varied distances, contextual to how fast you're going to be shooting. So a really solid shooting grip up close allows me to run the gun faster. That same grip, as distance increases, allows me to maintain that same degree of accuracy even if I can't shoot quite as fast. As much as we want things to be one size fits all, they're just not. Hands are different sizes. Range of motion is different sizes. Some people have, older people can have the beginning stages of arthritis or just general fatigue in their hands from repetitive motion injuries for what they do for a living. And those issues are going to translate into our grip strength. Athletes can have the same issues, and they can also have pre-existing injuries or conditions that have taken away some of the range of motions in their hands. So everybody's going to start roughly at the same point, most considerably. However, as we get older, we have different issues. And then the hand size factors into what gun you're choosing to use. Me personally, I can't shoot a lot of single stack 9mm, especially the Smith & Wessons, because my grip actually causes me to hit the magazine release on that single stack Smith & Wesson. Now, when I mean that, I mean M&Ps like the M&P 22 and the Shield. Now, when I shoot a double stack 9mm, especially the M&P, I don't have that problem at all. It's just that slight reduction in grip width that causes my hand placement to hit that magazine release. And I'm not going to change my grip just for that one firearm, which is one of the reasons why I don't really care for the single stack Shield. Even though it's a great gun, for those of you that want a single stack 9mm, I just can't shoot it. So if I was going to go with a single stack 9mm, my grip would force me to choose a different gun. Another issue we're going to have in grip is how we've been taught. Do we have any bad habits? When I was first taught how to grip a handgun, and I've talked about this before, I was taught to apply 60% of pressure with my support hand and 40% of pressure with my primary hand. I don't actually know what 40% or 60% actually feels like, because my 100% grip is convulsive and can actually induce malfunctions on the gun. I know what my maximum squeeze is because I can't squeeze any tighter, but how do I back that off to 60 or 40%? So if you think about it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to try to factor in percentages when we should really be applying as much pressure to the gun as we can. The pressure we apply to the gun is designed to mitigate recoil. If you think about how recoil occurs, it's equal and opposing forces, if you will. It's one of the laws of physics. As the bullet leaves the barrel, or as the bullet is leaving the barrel, that explosion is propelling the barrel or the bullet down the barrel, and there's an equal back pressure that's forcing back on the breech face, which in turn cycles a slide, which is how semi-automatic and semi-automatic firearms, at least, reciprocate that slide. That energy is going to take the path of least resistance, because that's what energy does. Because that energy takes the path of least resistance, it's going to drag that slide back, and in so doing, it's going to help elevate the muzzle, because our grip is keeping the gun stable, but there's a fulcrum point at the top of our grip where our hand isn't on the gun. So if you think about how the gun shoots, all that energy is going this way, which means it's going to pull. And as strong as you are, you cannot manage recoil in real time. So if the gun were to go like that, in that split second, literally fractions of a second, it takes the gun to buck, if you will, or for the energy to raise the muzzle, I can't actively apply any pressure in real time as this is occurring to force the gun back down. That's just not how, we're just not wired that way. We just don't have that faster reflexes. Now, the more we shoot, and especially the more we shoot this particular gun or a particular caliber, the more attuned we are to what the recoil curve is going to be like, and the more better, if you will, we are able to predict what the recoil is going to be like and apply the pressure beforehand. And that's where grip really comes in, is my grip strength is setting the foundation to manage the recoil as it occurs. Now, talking about two-handed grip, we have a much greater ability to manage that. But grip starts with the draw stroke, which means grip really starts with one hand. My personal feeling with the handgun is your primary hand is your primary hand. Your support hand is there to help mitigate recoil if it's available. It's there to help draw if it's available. It's there to help reload and fix the gun if it's available. So in a lot of senses, your primary hand is your main hand, which is why we call it the primary hand and not the strong hand necessarily, although some people still refer to it in that way. Your support hand is there to support the firearm, and that's recoil control, fixing and feeding the gun, things of that nature. It can assist in the draw stroke, but we can't depend on it, which is why draw stroke technique should be, you should have a really good one-handed and two-handed draw stroke technique. When the draw starts, I want to get what's called a master grip on the gun, which means the grip I apply on the firearm in the holster should be the same as the gun comes out, presents to the target. The support hand joins the gun somewhere along the way, and I'm able to deliver fire. Some people who still haven't quite gotten accustomed to their draw stroke, or maybe they changed holsters, or maybe they changed carry positions, after that first round they'll do what's called milking, which means they adjust their hands. Some people don't even realize they're doing it. And what that shows me when I see a shooter doing that is their grip is not ingrained, it's not so unconsciously competent, or something has changed and they're having to reapply their grip to a different gun. Remember when I mentioned those single stack 9mm like the M&P, my grip causes the magazine to drop. Now I could fix my grip to keep that from happening, but then that grip wouldn't translate to other guns. My personal feeling is I should be able to continually attempt to master as many firearms as possible. Especially, you know, being my profession as instructor, I see a lot of different guns come through classes. Not as many varieties as there are out there, but I do see consistently multiple brands over and over again. So getting into the draw stroke, let's say for the sake of instruction that I do have my two hands available for me. My support hand is going to help clear the garment, whatever that technique is. My primary hand is then going to purchase the gun. It's going to come in, and I want a gap between my belt line and the grip of the gun. Reason being, I don't want to have to shift the gun up to purchase my grip. I want it to be one fluid motion. I want my fingers to wrap around the grip. I want my thumb to wrap around the back of the back strap. So when I present the gun, this is my grip. This is the same grip I'm going to use as the support hand comes up and then applies to the gun and fills in the grip where I want it to fill in. That gives me my stable shooting platform. If at any reason I come out here and then have to readjust this hand, then I need to think about why that's happening. What is with my master grip that's causing that to happen? Is there some kind of placement, or is the support hand joining on the primary hand causing to push the primary hand off the gun? If you think about when you grip the gun, these fingers right here, this hand should wrap over them. With some shooters, it wraps to where these fingers press into the palm. Not only will that unseat your grip a little bit, but it can cause milking issues. You know, I talked about how people have to readjust their hands on the gun when they're shooting, or it can drive the muzzle of the gun in the direction the fingers are pressing. So if I'm really digging into that palm, I can pull the gun slightly to the right, me being left-handed. As a right-handed shooter, dig those fingers into the palm, you're going to pull the gun slightly to the left. That's one of the biggest issues I see when it comes to primary and support hand working together. And of course, the other issue is applying equal pressure with both hands. Now, before we get into the stability and the managing of recoil, let's talk a little bit about the physiology of it. What is occurring in our grip that can aid or hinder the gun based on our understanding of how the hand works? Just talking about the primary hand for right now. For those of you that work out, lift heavy things repeatedly, you'll notice that calluses develop under these three fingers, but not the index finger or the thumb. Reason being is our power is generated from the outside of the hand, that natural torsion. That's why when you throw a punch, it's like this, it's not like that. If you apply pressure with these fingers like you would on any other linear object you're trying to work with, you're going to pull it down. So if I were to draw the gun and squeeze, it's going to drag the muzzle down slowly. Now, as long as my pressure is consistent, that's not really a big deal. It dips the muzzle, I correct my sight picture, no big deal. But if I'm having pressure inconsistencies between the two hands, that can be another issue which can create accuracy problems. What I try to do is generate my stability from the thumb and the index finger. Think about crushing a beer can or soda can or whatever. I'm going to try to roll my thumb into the gun, and I'm constantly going to be trying to take this thumb and touch this part of the gun, even though that's physically impossible. But that's my goal during my entire grip process. I'm squeezing the gun forward. How much pressure am I applying? As much as I'm comfortable with to provide a stable shooting platform. I'm going to say 100%, to the point of convulsive nature. You can actually squeeze a polymer frame gun if you've got sufficient grip strength, strong enough to where if you hit the magazine release, the magazine will fall out. That's too much pressure. Back it off just a little bit. But I'm trying to roll my thumb into the gun. Now, if I have my support hand available, which is kind of what we're getting into, I'm going to apply the exact same amount of pressure when that hand joins the gun. Now, as far as hand alignment goes, hand size does matter. For me, I line up the natural curvature of my thumbs, so they sit kind of like that. They just made up, there's no gap in between them. Because the recoil is going to take path of least resistance. So if I've got any openings in my grip, energy is going to try to come out that area. It's going to go out through the rear of the slide, which causes that fulcrum pivot point, and it's also going to try to come out of any area of the frame that I'm not occupying with a stable grip. Constant contact, constant pressure. So when that hand fills in, I've completely filled my grip as much as I'm able. I have pretty average size hands, if that's a thing, but shooting larger guns like the Glock 21, otherwise known as a dictionary with a pistol grip on it, I can't fill as much of that frame as I can on a 9mm or something like that. And then even larger guns, I've shot like, you know, 357 Kunins and Desert Eagles for S&Gs. And the Desert Eagle, the 50 AE, I don't know too many people besides like maybe Steve Fisher who can get like the whole gun in their hand. So again, gun size versus hand size is going to be dependent. That's why you can't sell everybody the same gun. The Glock 19 is probably the most venerable carry conceal handgun out there, but some people just can't shoot it as well because their hands aren't large enough. Now, this isn't to say that if you have small hands that you can't shoot a double stack 9mm. I'm not saying that at all. You can. But you're just going to have to apply slightly different techniques for that. You're going to have to find a way to generate more pressure to make up for the openings in the frame or the openings in your grip to prevent, or I should say to mitigate as much as possible that energy. So if I have a natural opening in my grip based on my hand placement or range of motion issues or something like that, I'm going to have to make up for that by applying more pressure with both hands. Mechanically speaking, the only thing I need to shoot accurately as far as grip is concerned is the thumb and the index finger. If I'm just shooting one-handed, I don't need these other hands. I just need to be able to hold the gun, line the gun up, and press the trigger when I want to press trigger. Wherever the sights are, as long as my trigger press isn't some kind of convulsive or serious slapping in nature, the round's going to go where the sights are. Relatively speaking, of course, you can get pedantic about that as far as distances and ammunition and point of aim versus point of impact and all that. But that's all I need to shoot accurately. What I need to be able to shoot accurately repeatably in smaller increments of time is that stable shooting platform, that grip. So explaining pressure is kind of an imperfect attempt, mainly because language just doesn't really get us where we want to go. So when I apply both hands to the gun, what am I doing? Well, I already talked about rolling that thumb in. That's when I shoot one-handed and when I shoot two-handed. When my other hand comes in and I fill up all that grip, I'm going to use the natural energy of my natural wrist position to create kind of a delta of energy, the apex being the firearm. So I'm pressed out and all my energy, all my pulling force is trying to keep the gun as flat as possible as soon as I start shooting. Recoil does not become a problem until after that first round, but what I don't want to do is have to readjust my pressure or my grip after that first round is fired because that first round reminded me that recoil was happening. You know what I mean? You should be prepared for the recoil and have an intuitive memory of the recoil of your firearm before it starts. A neurological process called Hebbian plasticity. You guys have heard me talk about this a bunch of times. Basically what it is how we learn to deal with motor functions, how we learn new motor functions. Recoil induces or causes us to, basically Hebbian plasticity allows us to manage the recoil of a firearm. So we're learning a technique. It's no different than the pressure applied to a baseball when you throw it, the pressure applied to a football when you throw it. The same applies to the firearm. Biggest difference with the firearm, like I already said, is we can't manage that recoil in real time, so we have to know the pressure ahead of time. When I take a student who's shooting 115 grain and they shoot a lot of range ammo, or maybe not much at all, and then I introduce them to a self-defense round, such as a 124 plus P or a 147 plus P plus, they're not ready for that recoil curve, and it shows in their accuracy and in their, I guess, cadence of fire. When I'm shooting, I'm going to shoot as fast as I can relative to the situation, and that's basically time and distance. So just as an appreciable demonstration, got my marker here, should always have a marker. I'm going to give myself a convenient contrast point of aim on this piece of paper. What I'm going to do with this point of aim is underline the point of the ability to deliver accurate rounds is not entirely dependent on grip. However, the ability to deliver accurate rounds consistently at speed, even as distance increases, is exactly relatable to how good your grip is. So here we go. I'm just going to use thumb, index finger. These hands will be completely off the gun. So I'm literally going to be holding the gun just with the index finger and the thumb, and that's how I'm going to run it. So here's our hits. There's our point of aim. You saw it from the back. But there is the accuracy I was able to deliver. Is it on the black dot? No, it's not. It's slightly to the right. Why do you think that is? Well, remember when I talked about the energy is going to take the path of least resistance. Now, while I'm able to hold the gun stable until I press that trigger, my more or less almost complete lack of control of the energy that's happening while the bullet is leaving the barrel may just be enough to drive that gun just a little bit to the right as the recoil occurs. Now, I've done this demonstration before and been able to hit the black dot. It would just take me a considerable amount of time based on the distance I was shooting it from. Is this good accuracy? Well, if you take that group and put it here, that's our A-zone hits. So this is pretty high precision, but bad accuracy. So, and again, at the distance I was shooting from, I should be stacking these rounds on top of each other. But I am shooting with my thumb and my index finger, so I think I get a little bit of a break there. So those are my hits. Now, what happens when I apply the rest of the hand to the shooting grip? All right, we got a fresh target. Gives ourselves a fresh point of aim there. And we'll try it again. Now, my one-handed grip is going to be just like I'm talking about. I'm going to roll my thumb into the gun and give it that natural cant. Now, some people put the thumb up to help mitigate the energy at the back strap, and that's an acceptable technique if it works for you. My technique is try to press that thumb to the front of the gun, squeeze as much pressure as I can. I'm trying to limit that downward pressure from these fingers and maximize the rolling pressure, which helps stabilize the muzzle a little bit more. And as far as my sport hand, I'm not going to hold my shirt, I'm not going to tuck my belt, I'm just going to put it down by my side. I'm going to go ahead and get my sight picture, accepting the fact that it is slightly canted, and I'll go ahead and gauge my target. So based on the distance, we have some pretty good consistency. Now we're more centered on our desired point of aim. We still aren't quite hitting it every time we want to. In fact, I only got 2 hits on the little black dot I made, and everything else is kind of hanging out around it. Again, this can be attributable to the fact that I only have one hand on the firearm. Now, this accuracy taken in the context of the conditions that it was delivered is actually pretty good. Some people shoot better. I've shot better on certain days. I'm definitely not I'm not going to say I'm the best shooter, the fastest shooter, the most accurate shooter out there. But understanding the mechanics, I know why this is occurring. Now, when I bring 2 hands into the equation, does the shooting improve? All right, fresh target. Give ourselves a new contrast point of aim. We'll go ahead and apply 2 hands. So, 2-handed grip, same grip. And the grip isn't going to change. Primary hand grip doesn't change, even though I'm going to now have a support hand available. Support hand is going to come in, fill up as much of the available frame as possible, and apply the same amount of pressure to the gun. And then I'm going to go ahead and shoot. So now our consistency has definitely come together. In fact, I consider this to be pretty reasonable accuracy. I got one little flyer right here. I felt it when it happened. That doesn't excuse it though. This round should be up here with these, and in fact all of these rounds should be up here in the black, because that was my point of aim. The only thing I can think of, especially with that particular gun, for this video I wanted to use as stock as possible. This has an aftermarket barrel in it, which is kind of irrelevant. It's got aftermarket Glock sights, which you'd be kind of silly to use the plastic ones because they're more blessed placeholders. And it's got an undercut, but everything else on this gun is stock for the sake of this video, because I don't want somebody to say, well, you're doing that well, or you're doing this, or you're doing that because you have a race gun. Those sights kind of point of aim, point of impact right around 15-20 meters. I'm inside of that, so I am hitting a little low. No excuse, I could have compensated for that, but I think you get the underscored point. Once my support hand was available, not only was my cadence able to increase a little bit, but my accuracy definitely came together. And all I've been doing consistently is applying more and more pressure to the gun. So I started out, remember, I started out with just this finger and the thumb, and the accuracy was slightly to the right. And then I used my whole hand, and the accuracy came together a little bit, but was still kind of wide. Now that I've applied two hands of the gun, applying the same amount of pressure, almost all these rounds are touching each other, and they're in the area that I want them to be in. Now with grip comes the ability to maintain cadence. Cadence is the settling of the sights. When I fired around, recoil occurs, the sight picture comes back to me, or maybe never leaves my field of vision based on caliber, strength, things like that. If you're using a dot, the dot may not actually leave your field of vision, but it does come back to your desired point of impact. Cadence is your maximum ability to shoot when that sight picture resets based on the condition, the context, the distance. The closer I am, relatively speaking, the faster I should be able to shoot. Now, just because I can shoot fast doesn't mean I should, or doesn't mean I'm going to get acceptable hits. And of course, this is something that I have to underline is speed is relative to the context of the situation. I want to shoot as fast as I can based on distance, time, conditions, outside concerns, backdrop to the threat, things of that nature. I don't want to just mindlessly drive at full speed on that trigger, but speed is something that I want to have. The closer my threat is to me, the less time I have to turn him off. The best way to hit that off switch is to shoot him as many times as possible until he either surrenders or is rendered unconscious. Outside of a brainstem hit, we've talked about that before, this is the off switch, that brainstem. The high thoracic cavity where most people spend that's their default point of aim. That's starting a timer. We've got to induce blood loss to medically incapacitate somebody. The more holes I put in them, the faster I'm going to get that result. So that's why speed to me is very, very important, because if my threat is 6, 7, 8 meters away or closer, I need to shoot as many times as I can until he either surrenders or he becomes incapacitated or he goes to cover or something like that. So speed is very, very important to self-defense shooting. Now the accuracy is relative to how fast you shoot and how good your grip is. And I talked about it before, I want to apply as much pressure to that gun that allows me to maintain a higher cadence of shooting. So for cadence, I'll go ahead and give myself another point of aim. I've also given myself a smaller margin of error. Before I was shooting at the thoracic cavity, so I've got more room to play with. Now I'm going to be going for the head. The brainstem is my point of aim, but my margin of error is that cranial vault. If I get it, great. Now, of course, my margin of error outside of that is a complete miss. And I have to understand that going through it. But just for the sake of the demonstration of cadence at speed, I'm going to go ahead and use this as my desired point of aim. Nothing in my grip is going to change. I'm still going to fill up as much of the grip as I can, apply that same thumb forward, that rolling pressure, and the downward pressure. With polymer frame guns, I have that slight ledge that allows my support hand thumb to drive down on the frame of the gun, which does assist with recoil. If you look at like the agency arms, and then a lot of other people started doing it after them, and some people were technically doing it before, it gives me that positive context so I can help drive down the gun. Some people stipple there, some people put grip tip there. That's just one more way I can help mitigate recoil before it occurs, because I can't mitigate it as it's occurring. But nothing else changes. I'm still applying the same amount of pressure to the gun, and that's kind of a point I want to underline. I don't want to have to change my grip pressure on the gun based on distances or speed. I want it to be the same regardless of distance. Now, as you can see, my rounds are where I want them to be. Some of them are inside my margin of error, such as these little guys here, but everything else is roughly right in the neighborhood I wanted it to be in. I feel like I'm being strangled by a weak child. So, was I able to maintain a cadence? Yes. Was I able to deliver those rounds in the neighborhood that I want them? I'd say they're at the address I wanted them to be in. Same street, same address. Maybe I missed the door a little bit. Bad analogy, but you get my point. I put my rounds where I wanted to be. Now, of course, the argument can be made, you were pretty close, and that is absolutely correct. I was close. That's why I was shooting that fast. The further back I get, the less I'm able to deliver this kind of accuracy. But the further back I get, the more my grip stays the same. I already kind of talked about that, but I kind of want to, triple underline, italics, and bold that. My grip is going to remain consistently the same all the way back. Can you apply different grip techniques for different distances? Yes, you can. But you need to start with a solid foundation from one grip and then figure out what's going to work from you from there. And that's, again, going to be a very personal issue, such as trigger control and other things that when it comes to shooting, some things just don't work for everybody. But if you start from the same place, that same rock solid, stable weapon shooting platform, you're going to be able to, through trial and error or just through repetitious practice, find how to make small adjustments from there. Oh, and as you can see, I had a malfunction during my shooting process. If you guys want real malfunctions, this is the ammo to get. This S&B, Cellier and Below, or however you pronounce it, the red, white, and blue box that they offer. It's 115 grain 9mm, and it is absolutely dog shit ammunition. But I buy it because I'd say out of 50 rounds, I'm going to get 2 or 3 failures to fire. So I'm getting my real full power malfunction reps in. I can't. Unfortunately, their ammo doesn't reliably induce other malfunctions such as stovepipes or double feeds. I'm still looking for an ammo that'll give me that. But this is really great ammo for practice because every now and then, somewhere within that 50 rounds a box, you're going to get at least one malfunction, but sometimes more than that. One of my favorite words in the English language, because so often somebody can make a simplified point or just not take the time to explain themselves fully, and they lack context, or the listener lacks context for what they're talking about. When I talk about speed shooting, cadence shooting, people sometimes are outside of context, or their premise doesn't allow them to see what I'm actually talking about or what anybody else is talking about. So it's very important that we understand that things have context based on what's actually occurring. In shooting, the two largest determining factors in performance outside of our own physiology are often distance and time. Live fire practice is an imperfect art because we're shooting a paper that doesn't react like a real live human being. This is an excellent shot group. This is an excellent shot group depending on who you are. However, I can't imagine a human being standing still and letting you do this to them or letting you do this to them, which is one of the reasons, as you know, if you've been to a Sage class or you've been following the channel for a while, why I use three-dimensional targets, because I at least want to give someone a better fighting chance to realistically understand 3 dimensions, because that's what they're going to be shooting at. It's really hard for me to underscore that enough. That's another part of context. This is a horse that cannot be beat to death. This is something that we have to accept is going to occur when we're talking about things like this. Now, grip in context to distance and time is going to remain the same. What changes is the other observables on the gun, such as sight picture. That sight picture settling after recoil has occurred. The ammunition that you're shooting, that's going to have a factor too. Anybody can tell you, if they're being honest, based on the same gun, if they're shooting 115 grain 9mm in comparison to like a 147 plus P or just a 147, the pressure curve on the recoil is different, and it can affect their ability to reset their sights at the same speed. This is one of the things where shot timers are actually really useful, because they can show you, you draw two little circles and shoot one with 115 grain and check your splits, and then shoot the other one with 147 and check your splits, and keep doing that until the accuracy is identical, and then see what the time difference is, and then try to work to where the times are exactly the same. And that's going to, one, it's going to give you the ability to shoot self-defense ammo faster and better, because when the time comes, that's going to really matter, and that's probably the ammo you're going to be shooting. And the other thing is, it's going to allow you to shoot 115 grain like you were made in a factory. So now that I've established things are contextual, throughout this video I've been pretty close to the target. I don't know the exact difference, 5 to 7 meters, in that neighborhood somewhere. Now I'm going to go ahead and increase the distance, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain the same grip going back. I can start off close, the same distance I've been shooting at, and I'm going to work my way back to about 25 yards. What's going to change, probably, in fact I can guarantee it because I've done this a lot, is my ability to shoot fast. What also is going to change is my ability to get my desired point of aim, point of impact. Now there's outside factors that do affect accuracy besides just our grip. Your trigger press can be a factor if you allow it to be. Remember I talked about the trigger press video. You can't win a tug of war with yourself. So you may be allowing your trigger finger to affect your accuracy, and you don't even realize it because your support hand is giving up a little bit of pressure, so that primary hand and that trigger finger can press the gun in that direction. It's really hard to identify that, and that's where dry fire comes in handy. You can see what you're actually doing, or giving yourself dummy rounds, and when you press and don't get a bang, seeing what the gun does. For most people it's going to dip because they're recoiling, trying to manage that recoil in real time, which is what recoil anticipation is. We're trying to drive the gun down as it fires. There's a huge debate on if recoil anticipation is actually a bad thing, because I know a lot of people who, when they get that dummy, I see their gun jerk, but you don't see their accuracy suffer when they're shooting live rounds. So is the recoil anticipation actually causing them to shoot worse? My answer is no. Now, a shooter that it does cause them to shoot worse, they are probably having other issues besides just that one observable thing. So I'm going to work my distance back. Like I said, there's some other outside influences such as ammunition, barrel sights, things of that nature. I'm not going to account for any of that. We're just going to worry about the grip, and we're going to see how good my accuracy is in relation to how far back I get and my desired point of aim, which is going to be high thoracic. We'll go ahead and throw a new target up and run that. Now, as the distance increases, I'm going to slow down my rate of fire because it's going to be harder to get my desired point of aim because the target is going to be smaller in relation to my sight profile. I'm not using speed sights. I'm using Ameriglow cap sights, which they do have a thicker front blade, which I do like, but it does hinder your ability to shoot very, very precise the further back from the target you get. Fresh target. Give myself a nice, big, fresh contrast area just because I can. So I love when people wear logo t-shirts. All right. So I'm going to start, again, like I said, same distance. I'm going to work my way back to about 25 meters. I'm going to give you guys the same view I've been giving you, which is from the back of the target, and then we'll talk about it after I've shot from every distance I'm going to shoot from. Another factor of grip isn't just the hands on the gun, but it's also what the arms and shoulders are doing, which plays into recoil management. What I'm going to do, especially as I move further back, is pay very, very close attention to how much stress I'm applying in my elbows if I'm trying to lock that joint out. You can't technically lock the joint, but you can press it out so hard that you induce stress in your arms, which will translate to the gun, which can make your sight picture start to jiggle. You may not notice it up close, but you will notice this as you go back. So as I'm shooting, I'm pressed out, my elbows have a slight bend to them. Not so much as a shock absorber, though if you think about it, as the gun recoils, the elbows can catch some of that energy instead of it translating back into your shoulders. But more so, it's kind of like a circuit breaker. It keeps me from locking them out. If I lock them out, I consider the circuit to be blown, if that makes any sense. So if I constantly have that slight bend in my elbows, I don't have to worry about the pressure that comes from doing this, even if I do lock my elbows out and say, okay, I'm gonna lock my elbows out, but I'm not gonna apply pressure. It doesn't really work that way. So I'm gonna give myself that slight bend at the elbows as much as I can to keep me from even having to consciously think about how much pressure I'm applying in my biceps, triceps, forearms, so on and so forth. So shooting from multiple distances, as you guys saw in real time, there were some rounds that went where I didn't want them to go at every distance. Again, that didn't really magnify itself until I got further back. As you can see, I gave myself this, the A zone, but I also gave myself that black dot. Those two first positions I shot from, that was my point of aim, and they're still a little bit to the right. What is happening in the grip that's causing that to happen? Or is it a sight picture issue? It could be a number of things. My personal feeling as I was shooting is I feel like my support hand is allowing for a little more recoil to sneak out, a little more energy to sneak in that direction than I'm used to, than I would allow. And that's something that I have to work on through practice, because they say it's perishable skills. That's a very not contextual, that's a very cliche thing to say, but it's very true. If you don't keep up on these skills, they do start to get worse. Some people are naturally gifted when it comes to shooting, just like some people are naturally gifted when it comes to baseball or football or soccer or anything like that. It's still a physical activity. The two things don't directly relate, but there are some similarities when it comes to the physical activities themselves. All in all, not bad accuracy. I've definitely shot better. I've definitely shot worse. And this is just me being 100% honest with you guys. I'm not magic by any stretch of the imagination. What I want to do consistently throughout the rest of my life is do everything I can to constantly strive to put these rounds exactly where they want to go. As you can see, context did apply. The further back I got, the slower I shot, but my grip remained exactly the same. If your grip up close allows you to do one ragged hole with the amount of rounds that you fire, but that same grip does not allow you to hit in the A zone at all when you get back to 25, 30, 40, however far back you want to go meters, then there's something wrong with your grip. The grip has to work at both distances. Can you use a different grip for greater or for further back? You can, but the question comes up, why? What is that grip doing back there that it can't do up here? Or what is this grip up close doing that it can't do back there? My personal feeling is one grip. We want to create as much of a vice-like effect with our hands as possible to give the gun something stable to shoot from. If you were to put a firearm in a vise and work the trigger, the shot grip would be amazing because it's in a vise. So we want to make our hands and our arms and everything else that goes into our shooting position as vice-like as possible. That's my philosophy and my technique for handgun grip. I wanted to be as thorough as possible going through this video. That's why I took the steps necessary to build the context for what I was talking about. Are there other grip techniques out there? Absolutely. Are there other grip techniques out there that work better for certain types of people? Absolutely. But this is the way I look at it. Keep in mind, I'm very self-defense focused, so accuracy is hugely important, but my accuracy is in context to the human body. If I was a long distance pistol shooter, I might use different techniques. And when I mean long distance, I mean obscenely long IG 16,000 views distance. Like if I was going to shoot steel plates at like 300, 500, 600 meters with a handgun, I might apply some different techniques. I might then apply it to remove all pressure from the gun because reset isn't as important. Because I'm just shooting at a steel plate and I just got to hit it once and everybody's like, oh, look at that. So again, the horse that can't be beat to death, context does play into it. So my grip is going to factor in just the natural human physiology and what we're going to want to do, or what we're highly likely to do under stress, which is apply a lot of pressure to the gun because we are in fear of our life, or we just recognize that it's going to be a stressful situation, or it's completely taken out of our hands, so to speak, because our sympathetic nervous system is just being like, you know, shoot, 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 shoot. And personal discipline comes into that, and that's why when it comes to training, it's important to get as close to real life stressful experiences as you can, such as simunitions, force on force, in addition to live fire. Because it gives you a little bit of a different context. Again, there's that word again. And it gives you a new appreciation for the skills that you have, and it validates the techniques that you've been doing, or shows you, wait a minute, this isn't working. I thought this works great on paper. Why doesn't it work now against a real live role player? I've seen plenty of examples of it. Well, not plenty. I've seen some examples of it where someone had something that I'd never necessarily seen before as far as their grip or their technique was concerned, and then when I actually put them through force on force, they couldn't hit anything. And it wasn't because the guns are inaccurate, because at reasonable distances, the guns that I use, the Simunitions FX system, are pretty damn accurate. It was just because his technique did not work under stress. That student came back through probably about a year and a half later, having adjusted his personal practice to constitute or compensate, if you will, for what he'd experienced in the force on force class, and he was getting really, really good hits right off the bat. So those things matter as well. Got to underscore it again, you guys, you know, I always like to show my work. You guys have seen me shoot, so you can kind of take that in relation to what I've talked about in the grip video. Shot groups are going to widen out as we go back, and that's just a fact of life. I mean, we're not the most stable weapons platform. The firearm is as ergonomic as it can be, but it still doesn't work well with our physiology. There are some things that could probably work better that are, you know, up to guys that are smarter than me to figure that out. So if you feel like there's some value in some of the things I've talked about, this is just how I apply grip. This is how I teach grip, and I have helped people become better shooters. But if you're already shooting better than me, then maybe the stuff I'm teaching you probably, or I showed you in this video, probably isn't going to help you. But I wanted to be as thorough as I could, and that's why this video is as long as it is, because my videos are always only as long as they have to be and no longer. But if you have any other specific questions about the way I apply my grip technique, if you feel like there's something I missed, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section, or you can always shoot me an email. If you send me a direct message on IG or the Sage Dynamics Facebook page, I don't monitor those just because I don't need to be monitoring 19 different ways for people to contact me. It's so much simpler for just to have email comments, and that's it. But that's my approach to grip on the handgun. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.